Hey guys, it's Graham. What's cracking? This is my review of Monster Hunter Phantom, the English translation of the Czech MHI anthology, set in Larry Correa's world and with his blessing. Edited by a couple of Czech guys that had a real success on their hands, and now we get to enjoy it over here in the English-speaking world. There are 11 stories in this anthology. I've got a couple of favorites, some that I was just ambivalent on, but they were all good. The first one is by Larry himself. It's also the shortest in the collection. It's called Bulletproof. We get a quick glimpse of Owen Pitt, the main character from MHI. He's in Czechia on family business and happens to run across some guys that he recognizes from a dossier. This takes place right after Monster Hunter Guardian. He runs into these guys. He goes and chases them down. He's got to call into the local Phantom office real quick so that if he ends up having to collect Puff, then he's got their legal permission to do so. But he runs into another supernatural baddie along the way, and he has to get improvisational with how he deals with him. I get the feeling we're going to run into this dude again in a main MHI book. That was just my feeling, my takeaway from this story. Really nothing much more to it than that. The second one, the English title of the story was Homecoming. The Czech title was Aquarius. In this case, we get a Czech Monster Hunter firm that they're hunting a human frog type thing. This story it played on the horror elements really well. As you get introduced to the monster, you're like, oh, holy crap, like that's creepy. But it's a water-based monster, and it's trying to breed and basically infect a water supply in a main Czech thoroughfare, and the local team has to hunt this thing and kill it and take it out. Very, very creepy. The second story is called Brno Dragon. This is about a team in a place called Brno that there were just three of them, three Phantom members, that their little branch got disbanded, and there were two guys and a girl. One of the guys kind of went crazy, and then the other two since then have been underemployed, but then a job pops up that might get them back into the game, but there's a plot twist involved. This was a really good character piece, I think. The fourth story was called The Call of the Forest. This one was probably one of my favorites. There were some like fey creatures that set up a techno/metal concert out in the forest, and a whole bunch of people attended, not knowing that they were going to become part of a ritual to summon some monstrous baddies. And then the Czech version of the MCB shows up to contain the entire thing, and you get a chance to see how they do witness intimidation or discrediting. And it was humorous, but also like really cold and tactical and effective. Story 5 was called Sweet Dreams. This one was probably one that I got into a little bit less compared to the other ones. There was this succubus monster thing that they were hunting that it would latch on to you in real time while you were asleep, and then it would feed you dreams of things that you wanted while it was sucking the life out of you. And this monster team had to figure out like what was going on and how to track this thing down and kill it, because they were pretty evasive. Story 6 is called A Question of Greed and Death. This is, if you've seen the cover art of this book, which I'm sure I'll throw up in the thumbnail here, there's a monster hunter dueling a headless knight. That's the monster from this story. There's a headless Templar ghost that lives in a castle, and it inhabits the place. It ends up being a popular place for kids to sneak in and get up to illicit activities, but in this case, before they can do the hibbity-dibbity, the Templar thing shows up to kill them, and so, local team gets called in to deal with it. It's a new team, it's a new dynamic. The unique thing about this team is that they have a pet gremlin working with them. It's named Drinkin'. He was a good, like, merchandisable little character. Story 7 was called A Walk in the Park. This is where a Phantom Hunter, this was really, really cool element here. He investigates a park, like a city park, where numerous people have randomly disappeared after walking over the same patch of grass. And it turns out this is connected to some nature creatures that are pissed off, and the team has to consult a local deity to get to the bottom of it all. There must be some prevalent element of Czech mythology or folklore that relies on this kind of thing, because there were a couple of stories about like wilderness spirits or nature spirits that were mad at people and were punishing them for how they interacted with their environment. I got the impression that that was a common element over there. This and Story 11 were both, like, I would flag these a lot for sexual content. Like, these were probably the horniest stories in the anthology. Story 8 is called A House Worth Every Cent. This was kind of your classic haunted house story. The hunters were investigating a haunted house that had chased out a couple of tenants. Some of them had even died there. They find out what's haunting it, and they get bodied by what's inside there, but they don't give up. This was probably like, it had the strongest Ray Bradbury feel to it out of all the stories in there. Story number 9 was called How to Deal with Ghosts, or How to Deal with Wraiths. A guy has to outsmart 3 wraiths in various ways. It's a clever play on the vengeful spirit trope. Like a lot of haunted spirit stories, you got to find out what they're mad about and help them. In this case, like, this guy has to kind of navigate a labyrinth with 3 very particular wraiths inside, and he's got to figure out what they're after and kind of negotiate with them or play with them or do various things to get past them. Number 10 is called Border Guard. This was from the POV of one of those kind of forest deity creatures who was hanging out in the woods as there was beef between Prague and Ostrava, but there was also a phantom team involved. He could make himself invisible, but he could see them using their high-tech instruments trying to track him down, while he was also, dealing with supernatural incursions in that same forest. And he had some personal beef with a creature that had wronged his sister back in the day. So, like, he's this eternal creature, but there's also a bit of a mortal perspective involved in it all. That one was really cool. And then the final story is called Golden Fern. This one was, so I'm not going to be able to say this main character girl's name to save my life. Like, even though I listened to the audiobook, it's one of those, like, very, very Czech names that when I heard it, I was like, well, that's just going to go straight in one ear and out the other. But there were some other characters that just called her Red. She lives out in the woods, and in the little town, village, whatever, where she's at, there are a lot of lumberjacks. She's a widow, and she and her late husband were like tree-hugging hippies, and so they're at odds with the lumberjacks. But then some supernatural monster thingy pops up, and there are people getting grabbed by trees out in the woods, and the first plot twist is that one of these supernatural tree woodland creatures pops up, and it looks like her dead husband. And then come to find out, like, no, it actually is her dead husband, and there's some backstory behind that, and then they got to figure out how to solve that particular problem. All of these were very well done stories. I don't feel like they had as much variety as the Monster Hunter files, but that's because they were isolated to kind of one geographical place and culture. I benefited from watching a bunch of YouTube videos about Czech history, and also kind of having a back and forth with someone named Alex over at Phantom Publishing, who kind of gave me just some main bullet points about how heartily they rejected communism and how happy they were to break away from the USSR when the Cold War ended, and then how they had a peaceful divorce, they call it, from Slovakia, and then they became 2 countries. I think it's kind of funny how Czechoslovakia split into Czechia and Slovakia, and now within Czechia you've got, well, we're all Czechs, but are you from Prague? Are you from Ostrava? Like, there's always some line of distinction to be drawn. But having that little fundamental knowledge of them and their culture and their brief, like, well, not their brief, their recent history, helped me to kind of pick up on when there were jokes that the writers were working into their story, where somebody was taking a dig at Prague or somebody was taking a dig at Ostrava, and that's why. So overall, it was good. Content was on par with your average Monster Hunter story in terms of language and violence. This is just, it's European, so it's a little bit thirstier than anything that Larry writes. I'd say it's more on par with the John Ringo Memoirs trilogy in terms of the sexual content in it. But that's it. Good book. I don't know, probably 3.5 stars. It's, for me overall, it's not the strongest entry in it, but I can see why the Czech authors, who are a huge fan of the series, would want to kind of add their own local flavor to it. And as a completionist, I'm satisfied that I got to read it. When it comes out in paperback over here in the States, I'll gladly add it to my collection. But I give it a hearty endorsement. I think you guys, if you're already fans of MHI, then you'll like it. It's a good compliment to the rest of what Larry has put out there. That's it for now. Stay tuned for more book reviews. Smash the subscribe button, and you can find relevant links down in the description below, including to my Substack, where I do even more like reading recaps of the week. And I tend to get a little bit more in detail with my reviews of comics that I'm reading. Till next time, drive safe. See you out there.